281.
We'll lose sight of the world around us and those things that seem to be so pressing, those things that bother us, frustrate us, challenge us, the things that get us so easily sidetracked. Set them all aside tonight. Allow your word to speak, and we will listen. Help us, Lord, and strengthen us. We must go out and preach the gospel. When we look around, we see the dead and dark and dying world. We see the blackness, the evil. Sometimes it's overcoming. We stop and reflect. When we reflect, and we look and we say to ourselves, could it get any worse? And of course it does. But it's good for us to remember that you're alive and well and you sit on your throne. Everything happens according to your divine will. You are in complete control. I pray, Lord, that remember these things and go out and preach the gospel so that souls can be saved and laborers can be added. And they can find peace in a world without peace. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, so we are going to continue our lesson on patterns. Are you guys awake and ready? Looking up. What's that?
I'm sleeping.
You're sleeping. That's pretty impressive. Sleeping with your eyes open and talking.
Thank you.
I've never actually done it.
Our pattern notes.
Pattern, yes. Yeah, and
We're prepared for you now.
prepared. Fair enough. You weren't prepared last time?
Now we're really prepared for it now.
Huh?
You didn't give us the papers last time, that's what we did.
It was okay.
Or it was wise.
No, now we're prepared.
Huh?
Now we're prepared.
Now you're prepared. Okay, good. All right, so we have been looking at patterns. Last week we looked at patterns, and yeah, they're over there if you did grab them. Hopefully we see that there are patterns in the Bible, that we see that there's patterns in the Bible, and there's a lot that can be taught from those patterns. Last week we looked a little bit about the pattern of the tabernacle, and then we started to look at Abraham and Isaac and kind of finished up with that. Today we're going to continue to kind of look at a couple, a little bit different direction than what we have. But let's start in Genesis chapter 4 and see a couple examples of this. And then the ultimate example and reason why the Lord gives us these. And it's one of the ones that I find very telling, I guess. Very, very strong in the Word. And so who'd like to read? Genesis chapter 4, 1 and 2. Go ahead, Sister.
And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground.
Okay, so hopefully we're somewhat familiar with the story of Cain and Abel, right? You guys know the story of Cain? Yes? You do? Oh, good, good, good.
I know.
Well
Shocking,
done.
right?
Yeah. Who came first?
Huh? Cain.
Oh, Cain came first, right? Right. So we're actually going to look at this order here. So why did Cain came first? Cain, then Abel. Right. So why did Cain and then Abel? Now, who was the one that was following faith? Abel was. Cain followed the flesh, right? And hopefully, as we read these next couple, some of this pattern will also will come into effect. But you guys might already know it. So we'll go to Genesis chapter 25. Genesis chapter 25, and we're going to go 21 through 26. A little bit longer. Who'd like to read that one? Sister Ron, go ahead.
21 through 26.
Yep.
And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren, and the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her, and she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them.
Okay, so hopefully we're going to be somewhat familiar with the story of, and we always say it, Jacob and Esau, right? But what was it? It was actually Esau and Jacob. So why is this story important, right? So hopefully we're starting to see this. What do we see? Notice anything weird about this one? Maybe that's too broad of a question, right? Nice broad question there for you.
Hairy like a garment's pretty weird.
Yeah, hairy like a garment, that's a weird one, right? How about maybe something weird one? Who usually gets the inheritance? The first, the oldest gets inheritance. Are you looking forward to this inheritance? You're the first?
I don't want them to die, so.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well done. Well said. Okay. Right. So the first usually gets the inheritance, but what did God tell them right in the beginning, before they were even born? The younger, right? The older will serve the younger. Right. So this was a departure from the norms, from what is normal. And last week we looked a little bit, and we can look over there in Romans chapter 9. In verse 13. And hopefully some of this pattern is starting to develop, or at least maybe you guys already know it. Right? Romans chapter 9 and verse 13. It says, It is written, Jacob have I loved, and Esau have I hated. Why did God write that? And we looked at this last week, but hopefully we remember. Why did God write that? Did God really hate Esau? No. So what is he talking about? Yes.
Doesn't it hate in other senses mean to love less?
To love less, but in this picture, hate also means to hate. What means hate? Right? So, makes a question in your head, right? That's good. Yes?
Well, it has to come down to, like you talked about last week, that Jacob followed after God and was closer to God than Esau was.
Okay.
Because God loves everybody. But those that are saved and his children and following him, he loves more
Okay.
than those that are in sin.
Now that may very well be, but what does he say right in the beginning, right? Because you're not wrong. But why would God say there's two nations, but the older is going to serve the younger?
Well, Jacob was the chosen one, and that's the way you had to come to God at that time.
Great, I love it. But why was he the chosen one?
Because it was God's way. God can do what he wants to do.
Because of the pattern.
The
Wonderful.
pattern.
Because of the what? Oh, what is it? Because of the what? The pattern. Because of the pattern. Well, maybe, but you're right. What's the pattern that's developing here? Right? We only looked at two pieces, but we can look at a couple more. Is anybody picking up on the pattern yet? Huh?
So the second one's better.
The second one's supposed to follow God, and the older did not.
Well, you might be right, but we look at that, and I look at that. Do you think Esau didn't serve the Lord?
I mean, he did,
Okay.
just not as faithfully.
Well, and obviously we have his recorded where he sold his birthright. I'm not trying to get away from that, right? But at least in this case, Jacob and Esau, we don't see where Esau is
Killing his brother.
killing his brother or anything like Cain and Abel, right? Another one I didn't write down, but we have Ishmael and Isaac, right? I didn't write that one down. Why are you smiling? Because you were going to do that one. Okay.
I was finding
So tell me
very
about that one.
Well, okay, I'll tell you about that. But Ishmael was not the son of promise. He was born out of a fleshly, Abraham taking it into his own hands. Isaac was the son of promise that God had promised, and he did it in a way that was miraculous, basically. And I was trying to find where it talked about how, Ishmael and Mount Hagar is the fleshly, and then Isaac is spiritual. In the Galatians, I was thinking Colossians, so it's like a picture of old man versus new man, or physical versus.
Don't be so shy to say it because you're nailing it.
Yeah, physical versus spiritual, the law versus grace, it's
Okay.
all together.
What's that?
I was getting ready to say the pattern is because the Old Testament way was physical, and in the New Testament, the spiritual house is spiritual, God's house is spiritual.
So there's a lot of those patterns, and we can see a couple of big ones right there. But here is the reason why God says, "Jacob have I loved, and Esau have I hated." Did he actually hate the person Esau? But he hated the picture of Esau. That's why before they were even doing anything, what did he make a statement of? The older is going to serve the younger. Right? So, and this is not a new picture that we're going to see, right? So let's keep going on this picture to hopefully kind of see it. And we're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 9 and 16 and 17. Who wants to read that one for us? All right. Sister Manana, go ahead. 1 Samuel 9, 16 and 17.
Tomorrow about this time I will send thee a man out of the land of Benjamin, and thou shalt anoint him to be captain over my people Israel, that he may save my people out of the hand of the Philistines, for I have looked upon my people, because their cry has come upon me, or come unto me. And when Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said unto him, Behold the man whom I spake to thee of, the same shall reign over my people.
Okay, so we have Saul here, and then we also have 1 Samuel chapter 16 and verse 13. Who's got that one? Go ahead.
Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brethren, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah.
Okay, pretty straightforward, right? So who do we have here? We have Saul and we have David. What do you know about Saul? Do we need to go through the whole story of Saul? He was not great. Right? Why was he not?
Better than to obey than sacrifice.
Yeah, better to obey than sacrifice, right? He was the one that disobeyed God. God told him to go do something and he didn't do it. He rebelled. He decided he wanted to go his own ways, and he blamed everybody else for it, right? And I don't think that was his only problem that he had. Because really kind of look at his life, I kind of think that Saul was probably lost from the looks of it, right? From what we see. But what do you know about David? David was known as man after God's own heart, right? So this picture is developing, and not just these, but we see a couple of them here, that there is a difference between the first, which comes first, and that which comes second, right? Ultimately, flesh, spiritual, right? And why? Why do we have all the examples in the Old Testament, right? And we can learn, there's a lot of details that we can kind of take and look at from even those examples, right? So one of the first ones that we think about, Cain and Abel, or, what do we know about Cain and Abel? What did how did Abel give his sacrifice? Yeah, Hebrews 11 tells us it was by faith, right? What do you know about Cain's sacrifice? It was not by sacrifice. And the common misconception, Cain's sacrifice was not rejected because it was food. It was rejected because he didn't have it by faith. Right? Because there were sacrifices in the Old Testament that were food. Right? So it wasn't that. It was the fact that it was not accompanied by faith. So there's a telling truth in that example. And hopefully we see it. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And hopefully it's already in everybody's mind here, but we have 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 45. It says, "And so it is written, the first man, Adam, was made a living soul. And the last man, Adam, was made a quickening spirit. Howbeit that was not first which was spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterwards that which is spiritual. The first man is of the earth, earthly. The second man is of the Lord from heaven. And as is the earth, so are also they that are earthly. And as is the heavenly, such are they that are heavenly." So what is the ultimate pattern? What is the ultimate picture that we see in the Old Testament told to us right here? What do we know about the first man, Adam? What was he? Right, he was dust, right? It also tells us, he was dust, but it tells us he was earthly, right? Which is dust, right? And it's earthly, and we see it even in his own actions. What do you see about Adam? He followed after flesh. He wanted the fruit, and so he ate it. He took it. He thought it would be a good idea to make him wise, so he took it. And so it was flesh. Jesus comes along, who happens to be the second Adam. What's that?
She's singing a song. It's
Oh,
all
you're-
night. We're
okay.
singing this.
Oh, what the song is. Oh, there you go.
Right there, later.
And so what do we know about the second Adam? What is he? Jesus. He is spiritual. Definitely spiritual. Right? So we can learn a lot from this. What can we learn from this? We can learn, what do you first have to realize? What are you first? What's every person? We are all fleshly. We are all earthly. We are all dust. Right? And so we see that, and we understand some things about our very nature in seeing all the examples of, Cain, Saul. We see it in Ishmael, right? We see it in Esau. We see it in or Saul. I already said Saul, right? But so we see some things in there, and what do we see about those things? What do you know about? We'll just take Esau. What did Esau do? Sold his birthright. Why did he sell his birthright? Because he was hungry. Right? Because he was thinking flesh. Oh, I want. I see I want. I see I want. I was thinking about this flesh today. It's really surprising if you really kind of examine the flesh. All the flesh knows is what I want. You wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to hit the snooze button. Right? Or, I don't know if you're weird, you like to jump up and take a shower. I don't know if any of you are weird. You want to hit why? Because I'm ready to sleep. Right? You get up and what do you want? I want my coffee, or I want my breakfast, or I want. Right? I'm not saying any of those are necessarily negative, but they are all fleshly driven. Flesh, flesh, flesh. And I want, so I grab it. And that just tells us a little bit about what did Cain see. He was angry. He was upset. So what did he do? Lashed out on the flesh. Right? He didn't think about this spiritual. So when the Lord comes along, what happens when he had desires of the flesh? Think about his 40 days of temptation. Great. He did not give in to those to the will of the flesh.
It's not the flesh that I need, it's the spirit that I need.
He's a spirit, right? And so his focus was then on the spirit. And obviously there's a huge correlation there between even salvation itself. Because who brought death? Adam brought death. Jesus brought life. And it also tells us very much about if you are saved, what do you have? You have a new nature. What's that nature after? That nature is after Jesus Christ. Right? So these patterns, hopefully we see that they are established in the Old Testament, confirmed in the New Testament, and we can learn a lot from them. And hopefully, maybe some of the things you're thinking is how much that the Old Testament testifies and tells me of what's going on in my life, and what I can learn by seeing what's going on in the Old Testament. Not just necessarily only focusing on the stories, but focusing on what the picture of those stories are. Right? Questions, comments? 1 Peter chapter 3, because we'll plug away. We're just going to keep plugging away until you guys get bored, tired, or 20, 30 minutes.
First or second?
We're going to go, what do I say that? Second.
First.
But
Second is written down, so.
So I better go to second.
Okay.
I'm sure that's the one I want. It is. 2 Peter. Pay attention with your eyes, not what I tell you. All right, 2 Peter chapter 3. And I don't know if this is new. Maybe it's new. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not sitting and teaching, but I don't think it's new to you guys. But maybe it's new to you, and that's okay. If it's maybe this is the first time you've heard about this or saw this, perfectly fine. Questions and comments are always welcome, whatever it might be. And a little bit of reading here. So 2 Peter chapter 3, 7 and 8, and then verse 13. Who'd like to read that? 7 and 8, and then 13. Go ahead.
But the heavens and the earth, which are now, by the same word, are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. Nevertheless, we according to his promise look for new heavens and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness.
Okay, and I messed up, and I should have wrote down verse 6. It says, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. Right? And there is a long lesson in this, and so if we need to cover it, or if anybody has any questions, we certainly can. But according to those verses, what do you have? You have the world that perished, right? And that was the original creation. And then you have the world that now is. And that one happens to be reserved unto, reserved unto fire. And then we have a world or a new heaven and a new earth that we are looking forward to. Why did God do that?
It was not perfect anymore. Once Adam sinned,
Okay.
the perfect creation was destroyed. So that's also why he destroyed the world the first time with the flood, because sin was way too rampant. He said, I can't take any more of this.
Okay.
I'm saving those who are righteous. I'm getting rid of the rest of you. This is where the lost judgment comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's going to make us, those who are saved, a world that we can be on that's perfect, like the original one was.
Yep, all that is absolutely true. Wonderful, succinct. Why? Why did he decide to do it this way?
Because of the picture. Because
Are you cheating because you heard this in school, or did you know this?
No.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, because
Good, because...
it just clicked when we talked about it. But we were there, but yeah, but.
No, that's good.
I don't even think I remember this one, but I remember bits and pieces. Anyway, the point is, because of the picture of
like the old, and then sin came in and destroyed it, so then we needed Jesus to come and make new salvation.
You're right. Keep going. As we go to Psalms 104, go ahead, keep going.
We needed him, like, when we sin, we need to turn to him for salvation, and then also towards and repentance and everything. But then he created a new world that, well, he will, but yeah, anyways.
Yeah. You're doing a good job. Well done. Right? So hopefully that was somewhat clear. Somewhat. Right? Maybe it wasn't perfectly clear. But what do you have? Tell me about this first earth. The first earth, the original creation. Okay, that's the one that God spoke it into existence. And what do you know? Whenever God creates something, how does he create it?
Perfect.
Perfect, right? Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 4. He creates it perfect. Right? So what do you know about that very first earth? It was perfect. Right? And I don't know, in every way that you can imagine, it was perfect. It was without sin, it was without error, it was beautiful, and I'll tell you, there was no darkness on it. Right? It was all light. There was no sun. It was perfect in everything that went on. Then what happened? What do we see? Satan, right? Sin entered in. Now, why in the world did the Lord have that in this? We're going to read this as we keep going, or as we keep thinking about this story. Verse 5, it says, "Who laid the foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever." There's a reason why the Lord has that verse, right? So you have this original creation, and what do you know about it? It was corrupted by sin. Why would the Lord let that happen? Why would that take place? Think about Adam. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, so
You already
like,
said it.
like, before Adam sinned, he was perfect.
Yes.
He was innocent. And, I mean, you can kind of see it with us too, before we were like at the age of accountability, we're innocent, we're
Yep.
not,
Well, and Adam was even better than that, because
Yeah,
he
right.
didn't have any
He
sin.
didn't have
You're
any
right.
sin,
I
right.
see what you're saying. Yeah.
But, when we die, if we're under the age of accountability, we're gonna go to heaven still. Because we haven't made that, choice to sin at that point, even though we're naturally sinners. But then at some point we become aware of our sin, or with Adam, sin entered in.
Yeah. So let's stick with the picture of Adam,
Okay,
right?
sin entered in, and then he was no longer perfect, but God made a way for him to be like, better than what he was.
Okay, and so hold right there, because you're going, let's stick with this picture. What is it? We got the picture of the original creation. Perfect. Sin entered in by way of Lucifer, Satan, who now is no longer Lucifer, not Lucifer now. And you got darkness over the whole land. You got sin. You got corruption. And you got a desolate wasteland. Right? Do you have something? Or you want to keep going?
It's over here.
It's over here. Go ahead.
Well, no, because you said let's not go over there, so.
Oh, it's over here.
Or over there, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
It's so far both of those ways,
Yeah.
but it's not here.
Okay. It's not where we're at quite yet. Okay. Right? And then what do we see in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 2? Is it verse 2 or verse 3? Verse 3, the Spirit moved upon the face of the deep. And what's the first thing he did? Let there be light.
Had to get some light back.
Had to get some light back. Right? And so it entered in exactly what you're talking about. When we see this picture, Adam is created perfect, sinless. Sin entered in, what happened to him? Death. Death. And then what did Jesus do? Brought forth light. Spirit brought forth light inside an individual. And we are this second creation, this second world. Right? If you're saved, you are this second world. Because what do you got in you? You got the light of Jesus and sin. You got them both. Yeah, oh, thank you. That's light and dark, right? Wow, what a great picture that the Lord has made for us. That the Lord has created the world, the universe, the world that then was, the world that is now, and the world that is to come, all to show forth show forth me?
I just kind of asked her, but then so I'm gonna
Okay.
say it out loud, because,
You
so
wanted
I
to
was
verify
thinking-
with your sister to make sure that
Well,
you're right
'cause I was
before you...
like, if
Don't
it's a
worry, I
dumb
won't embarrass
question, and
There
like,
is
it's
no
right
dumb
there,
questions.
cause then, and I missed what you were saying, so maybe, I don't know, but anyway, cause I was just thinking, I was like, cause God made the world perfect, and he can't be in the presence of sin. And then he didn't, like, in the creation, like, he made the firmaments and, like, the divisions, and, like, he separated the darkness from light, so, like, then maybe this isn't gonna make sense to anybody else, but, like, my mind is, like, working like that, but, like, because Satan sinned, and so he had to be cast out, and then, like, there was sin, and there was darkness, so then there had to be, like, separation between it, so that's kind of, is this making sense? Like, he had to make, no, is it not?
Keep going.
He had to make, like, a new, world, and then new earth, whatever, and then that's, going through and saying, okay, let there be light, let there, all these things, the stars, everything. And then, Adam was perfect, and then obviously our minds kind of wander, and we try to, like what Satan did, we try to make ourselves above God, and then there's sin again. And so, but the part was like, that, I don't know, it's not making sense. It sounded better.
I'm following you, and I think you're on the right track. Okay? Now, so just a couple of little changes. You're right, God will not dwell with sin, but does that mean God does not know about sin? God knows sin, he sees sin. So I don't want to make some impression, because I heard it when I was a kid, God can't look on sin. God can look on sin. Okay?
God
So
saw the
that's
world.
not what you're saying.
The world was full of sin.
The world was full of
They
sin.
wiped
God
it out,
sees it,
so-
right? His eyes are on the evil and the just, right? So he sees it. But that's not what you said, right? You were talking about, which is a direction I wasn't even thinking about, but it's true. Because what does it say over in Leviticus chapter 10? That you may put difference between holy and unholy, profane and unprofane. Right? So what is that picture? You got a picture of the Holy Spirit coming in, and what did he divide? He divided the light from the darkness. He created that separation. So even the things that I haven't covered everything in here, but there are so many more details that can be learned just by seeing this pattern, meditating on it, thinking about it. Oh, I see that, and it becomes clear. Yes.
Well, and then with the light, then it just kind of like, light bulb clicked on.
Yeah.
It was all light, and then it was all darkness.
Yep.
And then light and dark were together, like when we have our physical and spiritual man. And then eventually, it'll be all light again, which is really cool.
You're right. Diane, right? And so obviously that's what we're getting to, because what is eventually going to happen is, it just stated it. What do we know about this new heaven and new earth? Revelation chapter 21 tells us there will be no need of the sun, because God is the light thereof. Right? And just kind of solidify with 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. And this is why I had us read Psalms 104. And it's so telling. God declares the end from the beginning. He knows exactly what's going to happen, so everything that he did, it's the work that he set up. Right? So 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, 16 and 17. It says, "For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air, so shall we ever be with the Lord." So what's eventually going to happen to all saved? They're going to heaven, right? But what's going to happen, we're just right here, they're going to raise again. You ever wonder why in the world God would have to, why do you have to come down to raise people? Couldn't he just raise them up there? He certainly could, right? But why does he come down here?
Probably because, like, with the world that we were just looking at, he came and, how does it say, I should
Foundations, laid the
Yes.
foundations.
But also just and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, which was on the earth.
Mhm.
He came down to do that. He could have done that from heaven as well.
Sure good.
But he came down and then recreated, reconstructed the earth.
Yeah.
So he's coming down to get the saved people that are, this first fleshly body.
Yep.
To be able to then give us a new body.
And 1 Corinthians 15 tells us that those that are alive are going to be changed. So, why in the world does the Lord, over there in Psalms 104, verse 5, say that the earth, the foundation, He has set the foundation, that it will never go out of existence? Me. I'm saved. This, the minerals and the iron and the water and all this stuff that you see here, even if I'm dead physically, what's God going to use to create a new body? It's going to use this minerals. It's going to use this, right? Because He has determined. Now, I'm hoping that the Lord removes all the gray hair, and maybe some of the wrinkles and some of the other stuff that I got.
Maybe we'll all have white hair.
Maybe we'll have white hair. That's true. I don't know, right? So, but He's going to use the same you to create a new you. Right? All pictured in the creation. Go ahead.
Sorry, that was kind of like a hand, but it also kind of wasn't. It also just got me thinking. Well, because like we had talked about, like in Sam, we talked about this a while ago, like in our Sunday school class, like the difference between soul, spirit, body, soul, and spirit, and how like the spirit and soul are different. Like the soul is like, okay, your spirit is like who you are, but then your soul is like your like spiritual, like, what gets saved and like accepts Jesus and everything. But then when you're talking about that, just I was like, because like your spirit is still you, and even if you're dead, like that's still like who you are is
Yep.
still, yeah.
Who you are still remains.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a whole other lesson.
So
Yes.
Then we which are alive and reign shall be caught up to meet the Lord in the air. See, I think He's excited. I think that's why He comes down. I think He's excited because this is the beginning of the end. This is the beginning of the.
I'm not saying
This is
that's
the
the
beginning.
way He comes down.
No, this is the
Yeah,
beginning
you're
of
right.
1,000 years.
Yeah.
He could have easily sat up there and resurrected everybody, certainly. But this is exciting for Him.
Yeah.
He's been waiting for this.
Yeah.
Because, after that 1,000 years, then He gets to dwell as a bride for eternity. The bride that He bled for, the bride that He shed His blood for, the bride that He loves more than we can possibly imagine.
Yeah, and when I was thinking if He came down, and I didn't make this very clear, in my brain I was thinking, well, why didn't He just create new bodies in heaven, which obviously He could have, but He chose to create the new bodies out of the existing minerals, or whatever you have, the flesh that's here. And there's obviously, leaping and praising,
To meet Him in the air, He's excited.
because He will be excited, right? And He says right here that He's going to shout. There is some excitement on Jesus' part to come and gather those that love Him. Right, so question, comments, and there's obviously we can spend more time on that, but we're going to move to continue with Pat. Go ahead.
I was just thinking about, in 1 Corinthians 13, it says that for this corruptible is put on corruption and this mortal is put on immortality. And that the flesh is corruptible, and it's something that can be wrecked and destroyed. A saved spirit can't be. And as we talk about, once saved, always saved.
Yeah.
It's incorruptible. It's done. And then moral versus immortality. And it's, again, as a mortal, you're susceptible. We get sick, we get sick and die. We get cuts and bruises and whatever. But immortal is forever. It's done.
still the Holy Spirit promise.
Yeah, and where does this picture fall in? You know, go along this very same thought. What do we see about this new heaven and new earth that will be? That will go on for all the time. That you've gone past this. That is eternal. You want to know where you're going to be? Right here. Now the Lord's going to take this earth and He's going to burn it down to its base minerals, remove all sin, and He's going to create a new heaven, a new earth. Man, this is where we're going to be.
Because wherein dwelleth righteousness.
Wherein dwelleth righteousness. Wherein dwelleth God. Right here. Right? So a lot of great things that come about, and that so much that we can be taught just by seeing the pattern. And hopefully this is really what I want to kind of impress upon everybody, is that there is so many pictures in the Bible that tell us about ourselves, about the world around us, about how things were, are, and will be. In fact, the Lord is not the author of confusion. He is a God of order. He is a God of patterns. He is a God that knows the very end. He knows it from the beginning. So when He created this earth, He didn't do it by accident. He didn't do it and say, oh yeah, I'm just going to create this earth and then we're just going to see what happens. No, He knew from the very beginning, every step along the way. What's the comfort in that? You think He knows what's going to happen tomorrow? You think He knows what's going to happen tomorrow? You think He knows what's going to happen in the next, well, pick the number of days out there. All of them. He knows.
At least 1,000 years.
At least. I'm guessing further. Just a wild guess, right? But it just tells us that we serve a God of purpose and knowledge, and He knows these things. And it is a huge comfort that He's got it all taken care of. And He tells us exactly what's going to happen from the very beginning, from the very earth itself. Right? So the last one we're going to look at, and we are running out of time, so we're just going to skip over and hopefully refer this because I want to give a slight amount of homework. You guys didn't expect homework, did you? 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Don't worry, it's not homework you have to pass in. It's just something for you to look at.
Never tell the kids you don't have to turn it in.
Yeah, I know. I should learn. But 1 Corinthians chapter 10, in the last little pattern that we're going to see here, and hopefully this one is not new, but Exodus, the 3rd chapter, hopefully we have a little bit of memory drawn back there. Moses was called of God, and what did God want Moses to do? He wanted them to deliver Israel, right? And so Moses goes along, and he comes through, and he didn't like it in the beginning, but he eventually submits to God's will, and he goes before Pharaoh, and what does he say? Let my people go, right? And Pharaoh says, no, 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 no. 10 times. Right? And then finally, he says, okay. Right? What's that? He says, yeah, at the end, he says, get out of here, right? And so they leave, they depart, right? What's the very first thing that you see the children of Israel hit? The Red Sea. And from a military or fleshly perspective, what a moron Moses was to lead them right to a sea. A dead end with nowhere to go, right? Again, do you think God knows exactly what He's doing? Yes, and obviously
He's the one driving the cloud.
He's the one driving, right? And we obviously know the end of the story because what happened? Splits the sea, and this is where we're going to read 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and 1 and 2 here. It says, moreover, brethren, I would not have you that you should be ignorant, how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses, in the cloud and in the sea. Right? And so we can obviously keep reading there, but hopefully we can gather somewhat of a picture here. And so they went through, and what does the Bible tell us right here? Who were they baptized unto? They were baptized unto Moses. Anybody know why they were baptized unto Moses? Oh, brilliant! He was a picture of who? He was the picture of Christ. In fact, in the Bible, Moses is probably the best picture of Christ that we have. In fact, you even see it because God says, I am not treating like Moses like all these other prophets. I'm speaking to him face to face. And he is closer to me than any other of these prophets.
Man speak to his friend.
That is a man speaking to his friend. So Moses is very much a picture of Jesus Christ in many different ways. Right? And then obviously when we see that they left Egypt, baptized under Moses, and then what's the next event, big event that we see happen? They had a couple little temptations, but what happened? Built the tabernacle. Why? Deliverance, baptism, tabernacle.
Church membership.
Oh, right, some obvious picture. Right, what does Jesus do to an individual who's lost? Saves them, delivers them from the world, from sin. What's the next thing that he wants? We are baptized unto Jesus. We are baptized unto Jesus Christ. Then what does he want? Church membership. Boy, what a great picture that is. And if you take a look and kind of meditate about those things and think about those things and all the little details that go on, it is so telling. Yes?
And then you wander around for a bit of a church member, and hopefully you're striving to get into the promised land,
Yes.
aka the right.
Absolutely.
Eating the spiritual meat that he gave.
Eating the spiritual meat, right? Drinking of the spiritual water, right? That rock was Christ. It's
Try not to be Korah.
Try not to be Korah, right? Try not to, follow after the flesh as they also followed the flesh, right? So there's so many great pictures there. So, since we are not running out of time, homework. Fun for you, hopefully. Read Matthew chapter 3, and really it's the whole all of Matthew, but it's very telling. Matthew chapter 3 through 10. Chapter 3 through chapter 10. And as you do, when you read it, think of patterns. And the pattern that the Lord gives in the Old Testament and why he has it. Maybe some cool stuff will pop up in your brain. Questions, comments? Let's all stand.
I don't have a dog, so I'm afraid my homework probably won't be eaten.
Well, you don't have to
I might have
worry.
some other
This
excuse though.
is the
You have a
homework.
cat
This
with
is
paper.
This is a homework that if you go home and you take a look at it, hopefully, I'm seeing this, take a look at the pattern, read through those, and I'm seeing, there's so many things that the Lord even shows. And sometimes when we read the gospel, and let's put it this way, sometimes when we just read the gospel, we don't necessarily think of the big picture. We think, well, Jesus did this, and then he skipped over here, and then he did over there, and then he did over this. And we think that they're not always connected, or that there's not necessarily a picture there. I think there's a picture there. And if you kind of take a look, you might see a picture there. Right? So, questions? Brother Tyler, would you dismiss us?